The moment I stepped into Principal Anderson's office, I knew something had gone terribly wrong. My name is Liam Hayes, and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Westridge Academy. This is my first year teaching, and every day feels like walking a tightrope between hope and despair. The principal sat behind her mahogany desk with an expression so severe that my stomach dropped instantly. On the polished surface beside her nameplate lay a small smartphone, screen facing up, waiting like a loaded weapon. "Mr. Hayes," she began, her voice carrying the weight of institutional authority, "I need you to watch something. Please sit down first." I lowered myself into the leather chair across from her, my hands already trembling. She rotated the phone toward me and pressed play without another word. The video quality was shaky, clearly recorded by small, uncertain hands, but the subject matter became painfully clear within seconds. It was me. The footage showed my empty classroom during lunch period, or what I had believed was empty. There I sat at my desk, shoulders hunched over a stack of ungraded papers, and then my composure simply crumbled. I watched myself bury my face in my hands as silent sobs racked my body. The camera captured every detail, the way my fingers gripped my hair, the trembling of my shoulders, the absolute exhaustion written across every movement. That particular day haunted me still. I had received 3 notifications that morning: my rent increasing by another $200, my father's pharmacy calling about unpaid prescription costs, and an overdraft warning from my bank. I thought I was alone. I thought no one would witness my moment of complete breakdown. "This recording was created by Sam Carter," Principal Anderson stated, and my blood turned to ice. Sam Carter. The name belonged to one of my most enigmatic students, a 9-year-old boy with dark curls that fell across his forehead and piercing gray eyes that seemed to look straight through people. He never smiled, never raised his hand, never engaged with other children during recess. While other kids played and shouted, Sam would sit alone beneath the oak tree, sketching in a worn notebook he guarded fiercely. "I don't understand," I managed to whisper, my throat constricting. "Why would Sam do this? He barely speaks to anyone, including me." The principal's expression softened marginally, though her professional demeanor remained intact. "Mr. Hayes, this is an extremely delicate situation. Young Sam took this video and showed it directly to his father. According to our conversation this morning, the boy became quite emotional when presenting this footage. He specifically requested that his father come to the school to discuss your well-being." My mind reeled. Asher Carter. The Asher Carter, billionaire technology mogul, whose face graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune. A man whose company had revolutionized cloud computing, whose net worth exceeded small nations, whose single endorsement could make or break entire industries, and I was just a struggling first-year teacher whose checking account rarely broke 3 digits. "Please," I said desperately, leaning forward. I had no idea Sam was there. I would never deliberately expose students to my personal struggles. It was a moment of weakness, nothing more. Principal Anderson raised her hand to halt my explanation. "Mr. Hayes, I'm not accusing you of inappropriate conduct. However, Mr. Carter insisted on meeting with you personally this evening. He'll be arriving at 5 o'clock. Until then, please return to your classroom and maintain your regular schedule. We'll reconvene when he arrives." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of anxiety. I taught fractions and vocabulary words while my mind spiraled through worst-case scenarios: termination, professional humiliation, public scandal. Every possibility seemed more catastrophic than the last. When Sam entered for afternoon classes, our eyes met briefly. Instead of his usual detached observation, his expression carried something different: concern, perhaps, or guilt. He clutched his backpack straps tightly and hurried to his desk without his typical pause at the doorway. Throughout the lesson, I caught him glancing at me repeatedly, his small face creased with worry lines no child should possess. The final bell rang at 3:30, but my sentence wouldn't begin until 5. I spent the intervening 90 minutes rearranging my desk, reviewing lesson plans I'd already perfected, and watching the clock hands move with agonizing slowness. Other teachers departed, calling cheerful goodbyes that I could barely return. The building gradually emptied until only the distant hum of the custodian's vacuum broke the silence. At 4:55 I walked toward the administrative wing on legs that felt disconnected from my body. Each step echoed through the empty hallway, a countdown to whatever judgment awaited me. The late afternoon sun slanted through tall windows, casting long shadows that seemed to reach toward me accusingly. I could hear voices before I reached the principal's office, one belonging to Principal Anderson, the other unfamiliar yet commanding. Deep and measured, it carried the confidence of someone accustomed to boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations. My hand hesitated above the door handle. This was it. The moment that would likely define the end of my teaching career before it had truly begun. I thought about my father, waiting at home for medications I could barely afford. I thought about the eviction notice I'd been dodging. I thought about how hard I'd worked to reach this point, only to have it potentially destroyed by one moment of human vulnerability. Taking a deep breath that did nothing to steady my racing heart, I knocked twice. "Come in," Principal Anderson's voice called. I opened the door and stepped into a room that suddenly felt far too small. Principal Anderson sat behind her desk as before, but now a second figure occupied the space, a tall man standing near the window, hands in the pockets of an immaculately tailored charcoal suit. When he turned to face me, I experienced the full force of Asher Carter's presence. Photographs failed to capture the intensity he radiated. He stood well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that spoke of disciplined gym routines despite his corporate lifestyle. His dark brown hair was styled with casual perfection, and his face possessed the kind of symmetry that made people pause. But his eyes, ice blue and penetrating, fixed on me with a focus that made me feel simultaneously exposed and strangely protected. "Mr. Liam Hayes, I presume?" he said, his voice sending an unexpected shiver down my spine. "Yes, sir," I replied, hating how weak I sounded. He studied me for several long seconds, and I forced myself not to look away despite every instinct screaming at me to flee. Whatever came next would determine everything. My career, my ability to support my father, my entire future balanced on this precipice. And Asher Carter held all the power to push me either way. Principal Anderson gestured toward the empty chair beside me, but Asher remained standing near the window, maintaining his position of advantage. The power dynamics in the room couldn't have been clearer if someone had drawn organizational charts. "Mr. Hayes," Asher began, his tone neutral yet somehow weighted, "before we proceed, I want to clarify the purpose of this meeting. You're not in trouble, and your employment isn't under threat. My presence here serves a different purpose entirely." The relief that flooded through me was so intense I nearly swayed in my seat. Principal Anderson offered a small reassuring nod that confirmed his statement. "My son Sam is waiting outside with my assistant," Asher continued, finally moving away from the window to lean against the edge of the principal's desk. The casual posture somehow made him more intimidating rather than less. "I'd like him to join us if you're comfortable with that. He has something he needs to say directly to you." I nodded mutely, unsure whether my voice would cooperate even if I attempted speech. Principal Anderson stepped outside briefly, and moments later Sam entered. He looked impossibly small next to his father, wearing his school uniform with the tie slightly askew and his backpack hanging from one shoulder. His gray eyes, identical to Asher's in color but vastly different in expression, were red-rimmed and anxious. "Sam," Asher said gently, a warmth entering his voice that transformed him entirely, "can you explain to Mr. Hayes what happened?" The boy approached slowly, stopping a few feet from my chair. His fingers twisted together nervously, and I noticed his thumbnails had been bitten down to the quick, a habit I recognized from my own anxiety-ridden childhood. "Mr. Hayes," Sam began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I'm really sorry for recording you without permission. I know it was wrong." He paused, swallowing hard. "I came back to get my sketchbook during lunch. I forgot it that morning and I needed it for art class later. When I walked in, you were crying." Hearing it stated so plainly made my face burn with embarrassment, but I remained silent, letting him continue. "You looked exactly like my mom did," Sam said, tears now streaming down his cheeks unchecked. "Before she got too sick, she used to cry when she thought I wasn't watching. She'd go to her studio and just fall apart. I was too little to understand then, but I remember feeling scared and helpless." Asher's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only visible reaction to his son's words. "When I saw you like that," Sam continued, voice breaking, "all alone and so sad, I got scared again. I thought maybe you were sick too. I thought maybe if I showed Papa, he could fix it like he tried to fix Mom. Even though he couldn't finish the sentence, overcome by sobs, instinct overrode protocol. I dropped to my knees in front of Sam, placing my hands gently on his small shoulders. Sam, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. What you did was incredibly brave and kind. You saw someone hurting and wanted to help them. That's exactly what good people do. But I invaded your privacy, he protested through hiccuping breaths. You acted from a place of compassion, I countered softly. That matters more than you know. Sam looked up at his father, seeking confirmation, and Asher nodded slowly. Mr. Hayes is right, son. Your instinct to help was correct, even if the method was unconventional. Principal Anderson, who had been remarkably quiet throughout this exchange, excused herself tactfully. I'll give you all some privacy. Take all the time you need. Once she departed, Asher addressed his son again. Sam, would you mind waiting outside with Marcus for a few minutes? I need to speak with Mr. Hayes privately about how we can help him. Sam hesitated, looking between us uncertainly, but eventually nodded. Before leaving, he turned back to me. Mr. Hayes, I don't want you to be sad anymore. You're my favorite teacher ever. The simple declaration shattered something inside my chest. Thank you, Sam. That means more to me than you could possibly understand. After the boy left, silence filled the office like a living presence. Asher moved to the chair Sam had vacated, sitting so he faced me directly at eye level. Up close, I could see fine lines at the corners of his eyes, suggestions of sleepless nights and heavy burdens that wealth couldn't erase. 3 years ago, Asher said without preamble, my wife Emily was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She fought for 18 months before passing. During that time, Sam watched his mother deteriorate, despite every medical intervention money could buy. He was 6 years old when she died. I'm so sorry, I offered quietly. The inadequate words all I had to give. Since then, Asher continued as though I hadn't spoken, Sam has withdrawn from nearly everyone. He stopped speaking to his therapist after 6 sessions. He barely interacts with his grandparents. At school, he's a ghost, present, but not really there. His teachers report that he completes assignments adequately but never participates. Never engages, never connects. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on knees, hands clasped. Until you. I blinked in confusion. I don't understand. Sam hardly speaks to me either, but he speaks about you. Asher corrected. Every evening when I ask about his day, he mentions you. Small observations. How you explained a math concept using building blocks. How you read adventure stories with different voices for each character. How you helped him when he spilled paint during art class without making him feel stupid. For 3 years, my son has given me nothing but silence about his school life. Then you arrived and suddenly he has stories again. The weight of this revelation pressed against my ribs. I had no idea. He seemed so distant in class. Distance is his armor, Asher explained. But apparently, you found a crack in it. When he showed me that recording this morning, he was sobbing. He said, Papa, Mr. Hayes needs help. We have to help him. Please. It was the most emotional I've seen him since the funeral. Tears pricked my eyes again, and I fought desperately to maintain composure. Sam is an extraordinary child. I wish I could do more for him. Perhaps you already are, Asher suggested, his gaze intense and searching. But right now, I'm more concerned with you. What's breaking you, Liam? And before you deflect, I need honesty. For Sam's sake, if not your own. The use of my first name caught me off guard, creating an unexpected intimacy in the formal setting. I studied Asher's face, finding nothing but genuine concern reflected there. This man could crush me professionally with a single phone call, yet he sat before me asking for truth rather than demanding explanations. Something inside me surrendered. The words began pouring out before I could construct proper defenses against them. My father has advanced diabetes and a heart condition, I heard myself saying, voice hollow with exhaustion. His medications cost nearly $3,000 monthly. Insurance covers some, but the copays alone exceed that I can manage on a teacher's salary. I picked up weekend tutoring gigs, freelance editing work, anything I could find. But it's never enough. Asher listened without interruption, his expression carefully neutral except for the slight furrow between his brows. Last month our landlord increased rent by 15%. I continued. the confession gaining momentum like a runaway train. The building sold to new ownership, and they're renovating to attract higher-income tenants. I've been searching for cheaper apartments, but everything affordable is either too far from the school or in neighborhoods where I'd worry about my father's safety. I realized I was gripping the armrests of my chair hard enough to make my knuckles white. Forcing my hands to relax, I concluded, that day Sam recorded me, I'd just received 3 separate notices demanding payment. My checking account was overdrawn. I had $17 in my wallet and 4 days until payday. I thought I was alone, so I allowed myself 60 seconds to fall apart before putting the mask back on. Except I wasn't alone. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I couldn't bring myself to look at Asher, certain I'd find pity or disgust or that particular brand of discomfort wealthy people display when confronted with poverty's reality. "How old is your father?" Asher asked finally, his tone unreadable. 68. He was a factory supervisor before his health deteriorated. His pension barely covers groceries. "Other family?" "My mother passed away when I was 12. I'm an only child." The facts emerged mechanical and detached, a recitation I'd delivered to social workers and financial aid counselors throughout my life. Asher stood abruptly, and I braced myself for polite dismissal. Instead, he withdrew his phone from his jacket pocket and typed something rapidly. After several moments, he returned the device to his pocket and fixed me with that penetrating gaze. "I have a proposal for you, Liam. Hear me out completely before responding." My heart rate accelerated. "All right, Sam needs consistent support from someone who understands him and whom he trusts. His current therapist is competent but ineffective because Sam won't engage. School counselors have tried and failed. What my son needs isn't clinical intervention. He needs connection with someone who genuinely cares about his well-being." I nodded slowly, uncertain where this was heading. "I want to hire you as Sam's private tutor and mentor. 3 afternoons per week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 4 to 6:30. You'd work with it at our home on academic subjects, but more importantly, you'd simply be present. Talk with him, listen to him, help him navigate whatever he's processing." I began, but Asher raised a hand. "Let me finish. In exchange, I'll pay you $5,000 weekly. That's $20,000 per month, for approximately 30 hours of work. Additionally, I'll establish an account to cover your father's medical expenses in full. Prescriptions, specialist visits, equipment, whatever he needs. Finally, I'll arrange for you to relocate to a secure apartment in a neighborhood near both the school and my estate. First 6 months rent-free while you stabilize financially." The numbers didn't compute. I stared at him, mouth open, brain refusing to process the mathematics of what he'd just offered. I struggled to form coherent thoughts. "That's absurdly generous. Why would you possibly—" "Because my son chose you," Asher interrupted firmly. "In 3 years of grief and isolation, Sam has connected with exactly one person outside our immediate family. You." I watched that recording, Lee. "I saw a young man carrying burdens that would break most people, yet you still show up every day to teach children with patience and creativity. Sam described how you spent your lunch period last week helping a struggling student understand long division, even though you could have been eating or resting. Do you know what that tells me?" I shook my head mutely. "It tells me you're precisely the kind of person I want influencing my son. Someone who leads with compassion even when drowning personally. Someone who sees children as individuals worthy of time and attention rather than problems to manage." He paused. "I've interviewed dozens of highly qualified tutors and therapists. None of them made Sam smile. You did, apparently without even trying." "I can't accept charity," I protested weakly, even as hope bloomed treacherously in my chest. "This isn't charity," Asher countered. "This is employment. You'll work hard for that compensation. Sam isn't an easy child to reach, but I believe you're capable of helping him in ways no one else has managed. Consider it an investment in my son's future well-being." My mind raced through implications and consequences. $20,000 monthly would solve every financial crisis currently crushing me. My father could receive proper care. I could sleep without calculating which bills to pay versus which to defer. The weight I'd carried for so long might finally lift. "What if I fail?" I asked quietly. "What if Sam doesn't respond the way you hope?" "Then we'll reassess after 3 months," Asher said reasonably. "But I don't believe you'll fail. My son has already demonstrated that you reach him. I'm simply formalizing and expanding that connection. I looked down at my hands, trembling slightly in my lap. Every rational instinct screamed that offers this extraordinary came with hidden costs. Yet when I met Asher's eyes again, I found only earnest determination. "Why do I feel like you're saving my life?" I whispered. Something shifted in Asher's expression, a softening around his mouth, a warmth in his gaze. "Perhaps because I'm trying to. Sam showed me that recording because he wanted me to help you." How could I refuse my son's first genuine request in 3 years? The simple honesty of that statement broke through my remaining defenses. "Okay," I said, voice cracking. "Yes, I'll do it. For Sam and for yourself," Asher added gently. "You deserve help too, Liam." Before I could respond, the office door opened and Sam peered inside anxiously. "Is everything okay? Are you both finished talking?" Asher smiled at his son, a genuine expression that transformed his entire face. "Yes, Sam. Mr. Hayes has agreed to work with you specially a few days each week. How does that sound?" Sam's face lit up with such pure joy that my vision blurred. He rushed toward me and I barely had time to open my arms before he launched himself into a tight hug. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes," he whispered against my shoulder. "Thank you for saying yes." As I held this small, damaged, hopeful child, I realized that perhaps Asher Carter wasn't the only one being saved today. 3 days later, I drove through the iron gates of the Carter estate for the first time and my breath caught in my throat. This wasn't merely a house, it was an architectural masterpiece. The structure rose from perfectly manicured grounds like something from a design magazine, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling glass panels that reflected the afternoon sky. The driveway curved through landscaped gardens before ending in a circular courtyard, where a modern fountain provided a subtle water feature centerpiece. I parked my aging Honda Civic beside what appeared to be a vintage Aston Martin, feeling acutely aware of the contrast. My car's rusted door hinge squeaked as I stepped out, the sound seemingly amplified in this pristine environment. I smoothed down my shirt nervously, suddenly second-guessing every clothing choice I'd made that morning. "Mr. Hayes, welcome." A man in his mid-30s approached from the main entrance, dressed impeccably in a tailored navy suit. His smile was professional but warm. "I'm Daniel Reeves, Mr. Carter's executive assistant. It's a pleasure to meet you. Please, come inside. They're expecting you." I followed Daniel up wide stone steps and through double doors that opened into an entrance hall that took my breath away. Natural light flooded through the glass ceiling panels, illuminating marble floors polished to mirror smoothness. Abstract sculptures occupied strategic corners, and I recognized a piece that might have been an original Calder mobile suspended near the staircase. "The estate has 23 rooms across 3 levels," Daniel explained as we walked, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "Mr. Carter's study is on this floor toward the east wing. He prefers conducting Sam's sessions there. The lighting is excellent, and it overlooks the sculpture garden." We passed through a hallway lined with what appeared to be contemporary art installations, each piece carefully lit and displayed. I noticed photographs too, candid shots of Sam at various ages, always with either one or both parents. In the more recent photos, only Asher appeared beside the boy, and even my untrained eye could detect the sadness in both their expressions. Daniel paused before a heavy oak door and knocked twice. "Mr. Hayes has arrived, sir. Please send him in," came Asher's voice from within. The study proved smaller than I'd anticipated, but infinitely more personal than the formal spaces we'd passed through. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 2 walls, packed with volumes ranging from business texts to classic literature to what appeared to be first editions of children's books. A massive oak desk dominated one corner, its surface organized with the precision of someone who valued order. But it was the reading nook by the window that caught my attention. 2 leather armchairs positioned to overlook gardens that stretched toward distant tree lines, a small table between them holding a chess set mid-game. Asher stood by those windows, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the afternoon light. When he turned, I noticed he'd changed since our meeting at the school. Gone was the severe business suit, replaced by charcoal slacks and a white dress shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows. The casual elegance somehow made him more approachable yet no less impressive. "Liam," he said, and the warmth in his voice surprised me. "Right on time. Punctuality is a quality I value highly. Thank you for having me, Mr. Carter, I replied automatically. Asher, he corrected, moving away from the window. Given the nature of our arrangement, formality seems unnecessary. We'll be working closely together for Sam's benefit. I'd prefer we establish a comfortable rapport. Before I could respond, a door I hadn't noticed burst open, and Sam practically flew into the room, clutching a sketch pad to his chest. His uniform had been replaced by jeans and a superhero t-shirt, his dark curls slightly disheveled as though he'd been running. Mr. Hayes, you're really here. The joy in his voice made my chest tighten with unexpected emotion. I crouched to his eye level, returning his infectious grin. Of course I'm here. I gave you my word, didn't I? I made something for you. Sam thrust the sketch pad toward me, flipping to a page covered in vibrant colored pencilwork. The drawing showed a caped figure with a book in one hand and what appeared to a giant pencil in the other. It's super teacher, that's you because you teach super good and you're nice to everyone. Genuine laughter escaped me, the first truly carefree sound I'd made in weeks. I glanced at Asher and caught what might have been amusement dancing in his ice blue eyes before his expression settled back into neutral observation. This is incredible, Sam. May I keep it? Yes. I drew it specially just for you. I can make more too. Maybe a whole comic book about super teacher fighting the homework monster. Asher cleared his throat gently. Sam, let's allow Mr. Hayes to settle in before you commission an entire graphic novel series. His tone carried affectionate humor that transformed his features. I'll be in my office if you need anything. Daniel is available as well. Take whatever time you require. As he passed, his gaze met mine briefly, an exchange lasting perhaps 3 seconds but carrying unexpected weight. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him with finality. The room felt different in his absence, the atmosphere lighter yet somehow less charged. Sam tugged at my sleeve, drawing my attention back to him. Can we sit by the window? He asked. Papa says the light is best there for drawing, and I want to show you all my sketchbooks. We settled into the leather chairs, and Sam retrieved an entire collection of sketch pads from a cabinet I hadn't noticed. For the next hour he walked me through his artistic journey, early childhood scribbles, gradually improving figures, and eventually quite sophisticated landscapes and character studies. This one is from when Mom was still here, he said quietly, showing me a drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a rainbow. I wasn't very good yet, but she said it was beautiful and put it on the refrigerator. I studied the simple drawing, noting the care taken with each crayon stroke. Your mom was right. It is beautiful because you can feel the love in every line. Sam looked up at me with those serious gray eyes. So like his father's? Do you think she can still see the pictures I make now? From wherever she is? The question carried such vulnerable hope that I had to swallow hard before answering. I think that if love is real, and I believe it is, then it doesn't end just because someone isn't physically present anymore. So yes, Sam, I think she sees them and I think she's incredibly proud of how talented you've become. He considered this seriously before nodding. That makes me feel better. Sometimes I draw pictures just for her, even though I can't give them to her anymore. That's a beautiful way to remember her, I said softly. And Sam, anytime you want to talk about your mom or draw pictures for her, or just feel sad, that's all okay. Those feelings are part of loving someone. Sam shifted closer and leaned against my arm, a gesture of trust that nearly undid me. Mr. Hayes, I'm really glad Papa hired you. You make the house feel less empty. As I wrapped an arm around his small shoulders, I realized that perhaps we were healing each other. This grieving child and the struggling young man who'd found unexpected sanctuary in the glass mansion overlooking the city. When Asher returned an hour later to check on us, he found Sam and me sprawled on the carpet, surrounded by art supplies, laughing over a collaborative drawing of a dragon wearing reading glasses. The expression that crossed his face, something between relief and longing, stayed with me long after I'd driven home that evening. Over the following 3 weeks, my sessions with Sam evolved into something far beyond traditional tutoring. We established a rhythm that felt natural rather than forced. Mondays focused on mathematics and science, but even those subjects became adventures. We built a model solar system using household items, and fractions made sense when explained through dividing imaginary pizzas. Wednesdays belonged to literature and writing. with Sam showing genuine enthusiasm for storytelling once he understood that rules could be bent creatively. Fridays were reserved for art and open discussion, whatever direction Sam's mood took us, but the real progress showed in moments between structured learning. Sam began initiating conversations about his mother without prompting, sharing memories both happy and painful. He talked about missing her bedtime stories, about being angry that she'd left him, about guilt over forgetting the exact sound of her laugh. "Is it bad that I can't remember perfectly anymore?" he asked one Wednesday, voice small and worried. "Sometimes I try really hard to hear her voice in my head, but it's getting fuzzy. Memories work differently than we expect." I told him gently, "The exact sounds and details might fade, but the important parts stay. How she made you feel safe, how she loved you, how she shaped who you're becoming. Those things don't get fuzzy because they're part of you now." He processed this silently before nodding. "I think I understand. She's still with me, just differently." Exactly. What I hadn't anticipated was Asher's increasing presence during our sessions. Initially, he'd maintained professional distance, checking in briefly at the beginning and end, but gradually he began lingering, first in the hallway where I'd glimpse him through the partially open door, then seated at his desk ostensibly working while we occupied the reading nook, and eventually joining us directly for the final portion of each session. His participation transformed the dynamic in unexpected ways. I watched this powerful corporate leader kneel on the carpet to help Sam construct a papier-mâché volcano, designer shirt sleeves rolled up and entirely unconcerned about the paste staining his hands. I heard him laugh, really laugh, head thrown back unself-consciously when Sam's science experiment produced far more foam than anticipated, covering all three of us in vinegar-scented bubbles. During these moments I'd catch myself staring. The way afternoon light caught the silver threading through his dark hair, how his entire face transformed when genuine amusement replaced his typical controlled expression, the unconscious grace in his movements even when doing something as mundane as cleaning up art supplies. More concerning was how often I found him watching me with equal intensity. Our eyes would meet across the room, and something unspoken would pass between us, recognition perhaps, or acknowledgement of a connection neither of us had requested, but couldn't deny. Friday of the third week, Sam asked if I could stay for dinner. "Please, Mr. Hayes? We're having lasagna and Papa said I could invite you if you wanted to stay." I hesitated, glancing at Asher, who had appeared in the doorway at precisely the right moment. Or perhaps he'd been listening, waiting for this exact request. "The invitation is genuine," Asher said, his tone carefully neutral. "Sam's been planning this menu all week apparently. Though I should warn you that his idea of proper dinner conversation involves detailed descriptions of every video game level he's conquered recently." "I promise to be fascinating," Sam declared with the utter confidence of 9-year-olds everywhere. "How could I refuse? I'd be honored to join you both." Dinner took place in a smaller dining room than I'd expected, clearly the family's everyday space rather than the formal area designed for entertaining. The table could have seated 8 but felt intimate with just 3 of us. Sam chattered continuously, his earlier reserve completely dissolved, while Asher and I contributed occasional comments but mostly exchanged glances over his head, shared amusement at his enthusiasm, quiet pleasure in his heckmas. After Sam excused himself to play video games, promising to keep the volume reasonable, Asher and I remained at the table. He poured wine without asking, and I accepted without protesting, grateful for something to occupy my hands. "He's become a different child," Asher said quietly, studying the burgundy liquid in his glass. 3 weeks ago, getting him to complete a sentence required archaeological excavation. Now he won't stop talking. About school, about his interests, about you. "He talks about you too," I offered. "He told me you've started having breakfast together every morning instead of eating separately. That means a lot to him." "A habit I'd shamefully abandoned," Asher admitted. "I convinced myself that maintaining distance would hurt less if something happened to him too. Foolish reasoning, but grief makes people irrational." He paused, then met my eyes directly. "You've given me my son back, Liam. How does one adequately thank someone for that?" The intensity of his gaze made my pulse quicken. "You've already changed my life completely. My father received his medications this week without the pharmacy calling about payment. My landlord informed me the building was purchased by an anonymous benefactor who's freezing rent increases. I think we're beyond needing thanks. The building purchase was simply good business. Asher said dismissively. The property was undervalued and the previous owner was exploiting tenants. As for your father's care, that was the minimum acceptable response or situation. To you perhaps. To me it was everything. Something shifted in his expression, a softening around his eyes. Then we've both gained something invaluable from this arrangement. Though I confess my motivations have become somewhat complicated. My heart rate accelerated. Complicated how? Asher set down his wine glass with deliberate care. I find myself anticipating Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays with an eagerness that has nothing to do with Sam's educational progress. I've started working from home on those days rather than going to the office, telling myself it's about being available if needed. But truthfully, it's because I've become accustomed to hearing your voice in my home, seeing you smile at my son, watching you bring warmth into rooms that have felt cold for 3 years. I couldn't breathe properly. Asher, I'm not asking for anything, he interrupted gently. I simply wanted honesty between us. You deserve to know that my appreciation extends beyond gratitude for Sam's improvements. You've become important to me personally, and I thought you should understand that. The vulnerability in his admission made my chest ache. This man who commanded boardrooms and built empires was sitting across from me, essentially confessing that I mattered to him beyond professional capacity. I look forward to those days too, I heard myself say. More than I probably should. Asher's breath caught audibly. Should is an interesting word choice, implying obligation rather than desire. Tell me, Liam. What do you actually want? Setting aside what you think you should want. Before I could formulate an answer that wouldn't irrevocably change everything between us, Sam's voice called from the other room asking if I wanted to see his latest gaming achievement. The moment shattered, leaving us staring at each other across the table, a question hanging unanswered in the space between us. The following Friday arrived wrapped in tension. I couldn't quite name. Sam seemed oblivious to any undercurrents, chattering excitedly about a school project as I helped him organize research materials. We'd been working for about an hour when he yawned widely, rubbing his eyes with the back of his hand. Tired, buddy? I asked, already knowing the answer. Little bit, he admitted. Can we do reading time instead of writing? I like when you do the different character voices. Absolutely. Go grab whatever book you want. He returned, clutching a worn copy of The Secret Garden, pages softened from repeated reading. Mom used to read this to me. I stopped after but I think I'd like to try again. With you. The trust implicit in that request made my throat tight. I'd be honored. We settled onto the leather couch, Sam tucked against my side as I began reading. His eyes grew heavy within minutes, his breathing evening out into sleep's rhythm. I continued reading softly, unwilling to disturb his peaceful rest until Asher's quiet presence in the doorway made me look up. He stood watching us with an expression I couldn't fully interpret, something tender and painful simultaneously. When our eyes met, he gestured toward the hallway. I carefully extricated myself from Sam, covering him with a throw blanket before following Asher out. He hasn't slept that peacefully in my presence since before Emily died, Asher said quietly as we walked toward his study. I can get him into bed, but there's always resistance, always anxiety, and he falls asleep on you as naturally as breathing. He feels safe, I said simply. That's all children really need to feel secure enough to let their guard down. Asher held the study door open for me and I entered the familiar space that had become oddly comfortable over recent weeks. But instead of heading toward his desk or the reading nook, he remained near the door after closing it, hands in his pockets, that carefully controlled expression firmly in place. I need to address what I said last week, he began without preamble. My admission was inappropriate given our professional relationship. I've spent considerable time considering whether to apologize or simply pretend the conversation never occurred. But I've decided on a different approach. Complete transparency. My pulse thundered in my ears. I'm listening. These past weeks have been transformative, Asher continued, his voice low and measured. Watching Sam emerge from his grief, seeing life return to this house, feeling genuine emotion again. It's been remarkable. But Liam, somewhere in the process, my focus shifted. I realized I wasn't just grateful for what you've done for Sam. I was drawn to you specifically, independently of your role in my son's life. He moved closer and I found myself unable to step back even as every rational thought screamed warnings about crossing professional boundaries. I noticed things I shouldn't, he continued. The way you unconsciously bite your lower lip when concentrating. How you run your fingers through your hair when frustrated with yourself. The particular shade of green your eyes turn in afternoon sunlight. These observations have nothing to do with Sam's education, and everything to do with the fact that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. This is dangerous territory. I managed to whisper. Extremely, Asher agreed, which is why I need you to be brutally honest with me right now. Am I alone in this? Because if I am, I'll reconstruct appropriate boundaries immediately. Our arrangement continues unchanged and I never mention this again. But if there's any possibility that you feel even a fraction of what I'm experiencing, then we need to discuss how to navigate this situation responsibly. His ice blue eyes held mine with an intensity that made lying impossible even if I'd wanted to. You're not alone, I admitted, the words escaping before I could reconsider. And it terrifies me because I have so much to lose. Sam trusts me. You've given me stability I've never known. If this goes wrong, what makes you certain it would go wrong? Asher interrupted gently. Because things like this always do for people like me, I said bitterly. I'm the struggling teacher from the wrong side of town. You're a billionaire CEO. This isn't a romance novel where those theses magically don't matter. In the real world, they matter enormously. You're right, Asher said, surprising me. The differences are significant, but you're measuring the wrong variables. You think our financial disparity is the relevant factor, but I see something entirely different. I see a man who shows up consistently for a child who isn't his responsibility. Someone who treats my son with genuine care rather than calculated interest in accessing my wealth. A person of remarkable integrity who could have exploited this situation in countless ways but chose honesty instead. He closed the remaining distance between us until I had to tilt my head back slightly to maintain eye contact. Those qualities matter infinitely more than bank balances or social status. So I'll ask you again, what do you actually want, Liam? Not what frightens you or what you think you deserve. What do you want? The question hung in the air between us, demanding an answer that would fundamentally change everything. I thought about Sam sleeping peacefully on the couch, about the life I'd begun building in this glass mansion, about all the rational reasons to maintain professional distance. Then I thought about how my heart raced every time Asher entered a room, how his rare smiles felt like personal victories, how right it felt when our hands accidentally brushed reaching for the same art supply, how much I wanted to know if his lips were as soft as they looked. I want this to be real, I whispered. I want to stop pretending I don't feel something profound happening between us. I want to explore whatever this is, even though it scares me senseless. Asher's breath released in a rush, as though he'd been holding it waiting for my response. His hand rose slowly to cup my jaw, thumb brushing across my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Then we moved forward carefully, he said, his voice rough with emotion. No rushing, no assumptions. We protect Sam above all else, and maintain absolute honesty with each other. Can you agree to those terms? I nodded, not trusting my voice. I need to hear you say it, Liam. I agree, I managed. Carefully. Honestly. Always protecting Sam. Good, Asher murmured. And then he was kissing me. The touch of his lips against mine was nothing like I'd imagined. Softer, slower, more questioning than claiming. His other hand settled at my waist, anchoring rather than trapping, while I gripped his shirt front simply to remain standing as the world tilted around us. When we finally separated, foreheads resting together while we caught our breath, Asher smiled, a genuine expression of joy I'd never seen before. Well, he said quietly, that complicated things considerably. Despite everything, I laughed. Understatement of the century. Are you regretting it already? I considered lying, then remembered our agreement about honesty. No. Terrified about what comes next, but not regretting this. Then we'll figure out what comes next together, Asher said, pressing one more gentle kiss to my forehead. Starting with getting Sam properly into bed before he wakes up with a crick in his neck from the couch. As we walked back toward where Sam slept, Asher's hand found mine in the hallway, our fingers intertwining naturally. Whatever we'd started tonight would require careful navigation, but for the first time in my life, I felt genuinely hopeful about an uncertain future.